Welcome to the Daily Exchange. We're here with Mike Rodolph. We're talking about building your business on EOS with the great AdNode.io. Guys, we'll see you guys right after this. All right, guys, welcome back. We're here. We're in our chill out zone. Mike, how you feeling?
Great. Thank you for having me on.
Welcome to the Daily Exchange. This is the new New York style. It's like a Havana club almost. Really, it's like amazing. I love this.
Well, this is my life every day. So.
Yeah, I can imagine. Mike Rodolph, co-founder of AdNode, AdNode.io, a new product built on top of EOS to enhance digital marketing and advertising. It's, I guess, all about viewability, brand safety, audience verification. We're going to talk a little bit about those things in a sec. Allows customers to customize their ad campaigns and includes end-to-end tracking of viewer engagement. Mike, welcome to the show. As I said before, tell us, in your words, tell us a bit about AdNode.
Right. So AdNode's focused on bringing accountability to digital marketing. So Nielsen put out a report recently about 55 cents of every ad dollar spent on digital is lost to non-viewable inventory, waste, other types of fraud. Some of the other challenges we see in the space is there's a heck of a lot of discrepancies, very little transparency in the space, and also reconciliation is a nightmare for ad agencies, for publishers, and brands as well.
Mm-hmm. So, there was that big controversy. I think Chase Cards closed down, I think, all of their other advertising, and then brought and only focused on their I think it was top 250 sites or something like that.
Yep.
Is that the sort of area, that sort of controversy, and there were ads, people were appearing next to really bad ads at the time?
Right. So, yeah, brand safety is an issue. It's a huge issue for a lot of brands, whether it's sexually suggestive, whether it's violence, whether it's terrorist-oriented content, and many different types of categories. In reality, when you put ads up on long-tail websites, it's really difficult to verify whether or not those ads are appearing in a good place. And when companies are hiring third-party verification firms to verify this, there are typically is a very long lag in finding out whether or not the ad was actually in a brand-safe environment or not. And there are different methodologies for figuring this out. So ultimately, part of what AdNode strives to do is to create a consensus around whether ads are being delivered, viewable, brand safe, audience verified, according to terms that marketers and publishers agree on. But I think you're right that a lot of brands are thinking about who's responsible ultimately for our digital advertising, and this responsibility has been one of the biggest issues here, because the brands ultimately are looking at their ad agencies to put ads in safe places and make sure that they're getting the right, they're paying for ads that are actually viewed by real people who they're targeting. And then the agencies, of course, expect publishers to deliver on that. And then the publishers expect third-party verification companies and others to help them with that. Ultimately, it's a problem called the diffusion of responsibility. So a good example of this is we're in New York, 100 of us see an accident. The reality is it's really likely nobody's going to call for help. If you're down the street and you're the only person who sees a car accident, you're very likely to call for help. And the issue is that there's so many cooks in the kitchen, so many different reports involved in analyzing whether ads are working or not. It actually takes months to figure that out. Mm-hmm. And that leads to a lot of transparency issues, a lot of delays, and ultimately a lot of cost across the ecosystem.
Okay. So, how does AdNode compare with other legacy solutions? Like, what's the difference?
Sure. So this is how an ad campaign typically works today. There's a contract. It's called an insertion order or an IO. And in this insertion order, you agree on number of units, the price of the units, the dates that the ads will run, and the places where those ads will appear. And there are different types of systems. Sometimes they're actually paper contracts, which means that we sign the paper contract, we upload a PDF, scan a PDF, email it out, the other side signs, they send it back, and then the ads start running. a month later, 2 months later, 3 months later, each of the folks, the marketer and the publisher, receive reports from companies that they've hired to figure out, hey, were the ads viewed 80% of the time or 100% of the time? Was it 50% viewed, et cetera? Were the ads in a brand safe place? Did the ads appear in front of the right users? And each of the sides is basically looking at the data to figure out what happened.
So what data? What's the software?
Right. So firms rely on different ad measurement companies. This might be Integral Ad Science or a Mode or might be DoubleClick reports. Okay. So different companies are hired to provide as verification. And some ad campaigns, actually no companies are looked at. But in any case, there's this kind of paper trail. Yep. It's a very human-intensive role where invoices are issued. They're often not correct. There are huge discrepancies. It's a lot of phone and email. So for an industry that's basically thought to be very automated, there's actually a ton of manual work involved associated with this.
So let's say we're running this ad. Tell us, how does the blockchain fit in with this? And we're going to get to this in a bit. You've built your business and technology on EOS, which is incredible.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that because I think it's an important topic. But let's take brand viewability. Does this ad run here or not run here?
Yep.
Tell us how does AdNode get involved with this, and how does the blockchain get involved?
Yep, absolutely. So there's multiple issues associated with viewability, brand safety. One is the history of a site and their viewability and brand safety, and the other is their performance along the way in campaigns you're running. So the way that firms look at history today is publisher goes to marketer and says, here's a presentation that says we're 80% viewable and we're ultra brand safe, and then the agency looks at this and says, well, where's the basis for that? And really there isn't any. You're just pointing at safe, but on average, that's really not the case. So how does that work? And then the challenge is that there's really no way to verify what the history and performance is of different companies. And even if you already work with a particular publisher, you're only seeing how they're performing with you, not necessarily with other brands and marketers. So imagine purchase.
So you're keeping a track of the history of a website on the blockchain in terms of viewability?
Specifically the ad delivery, and particularly on the terms that we agree on. So let's, for example, we enter into a smart contract, and my goal is to buy ads that are at least 50% viewed, 50% of the ad is viewed, and it's viewed for at least 1 second or longer, right? So if 40% of the ad's viewed, if it loads up in a video player, you can't quite see the whole thing, or somebody just sees the full ad, but they just scroll through it really fast in a half a second, I don't want to pay for that. Now, the way that you and I track that might be different, and the reporting will take us many months actually to figure out by the time somebody takes the time to look at it, compare, figure it out, and it's a very inefficient and time-consuming process. So from a buyer perspective, let's assume I'm buying actually not just from you, but from another publisher, and I'm paying a gross CPM, which is a cost for every 1,000 ad impressions of $10, both to yourself and the other publisher. And I'm going to say, hey, I'm just going to make sure that the viewability looks high, like 70% or 80%. I'm just going to pay regardless, because otherwise it's just too hard to account for. But I'm going to give you a hard time if I think it's too low, and that's a lot of campaigns today. Well, I'm going to find out the reporting after. But if, for example, you delivered 50% of your ads as viewable according to my criteria, and the other publisher delivered 25% of their ads as viewable according to my criteria, then that actually means my viewable CPM with you is $20, and my viewable CPM with him is $40. Now, if I'm looking at these reports and figuring this out 2 or 3 months later, I'm not getting full value for my dollars. But if I actually shift my ad dollars towards you, say at the end of every day or every hour more, because you're delivering more viewability and a lower effective CPM, then what that means is now I'm able to get more value for my dollars, which means either buying twice as many viewable ads or paying half the amount.
Okay. So where does the blockchain come in? So the ad viewability is measured by who?
So it depends on who you select. In the smart contract, we trust in ad measurement companies that we agree on.
Okay.
Right.
So you choose your software.
Right.
We agree on that. The viewability goes into the blockchain.
Right.
Now that publisher gets a certain viewability score. It's stored there forever.
Well, it's a little different than that. So what happens is we have a file now that's stored, a text file. Think of it as a text file. Which has the viewability for essentially every ad impression. We have hashes created from these ad impression records, and we also have hashes created from the orders that we enter into, which are the smart contracts.
And where does this text file come from?
It's created. So AdNode receives feeds from the different ad measurement companies that are agreed on the smart contracts.
So for every ad that gets served, we know the viewability of it.
Exactly. So we know the viewability of the ad, and then separately from that, we have another contract, which is a smart contract, which is the order. And then essentially what AdNode does is reconciles those two. So it reconciles the blockchain verified orders with the blockchain verified ad delivery to see what that should be.
So you take the software data feed, from the viewability from these software companies.
It depends. It could be viewability, it could be brand safety, it could be audience verification.
Take the data, and then you sort of translate it into a format that everyone understands, and then you match that up with the IO or the order of the ads and make sure that they are reconciled. And then you're keeping a history as well of that publisher to some extent?
Exactly. So one of our core values as a company is we stand for transparency and respect privacy. And what that means is that there's a permanent history of every transaction, which means whether it's a ad view, whether it's an order, and those orders and ad views are only shared when either marketers and publishers connect with each other, or if they optionally decide to share with others.
Makes sense.
If we want to do business together, then I might require you to share with me what your viewability is, or maybe even what your pricing is, and you need to decide whether to agree to that or not.
Right. So this data, you got the text, this brand. What would you say? Like these are. How would you rate? What's the generic word? Viewability, brand safety, audience verification. What's that? Brand.
Ad measurement.
Ad measurement. That's good. There we go. Ad measurement. You got this ad measurement data. Why do you need to put this in the blockchain? What's the benefit?
Right. So I think the primary benefit is trust. So if you don't have a verified system, then you don't really know that the data is any good. And if that's the case, then really you have a centralized data set. And I think the important thing to keep in mind is that the folks who buy ads are really media investors, and that's the hat that those folks wear. And anytime you agree to data to basically cut a check, you want to make sure that data is right. So if there isn't a way to make sure that that data is right all the time and audit it, you're basically going to keep your own records. And as a publisher, that media is worth something to you. So you're keeping your own records of how much media you delivered and what that is. And if there isn't an auditable way of making sure the data is right along the way, you're going to keep your own records too. Now, when you buy digital...
Are there problems with publishers manufacturing this?
I think a lot of folks have been caught with manipulating the results of advertising delivery.
Right.
There are a lot of different issues. So I think one of the more prominent examples is, there's a debate out there how much of this is intentional versus accidental. Facebook goes out there and they were not counting the video ads that were below 3 seconds long. So they massively over-reported how long users spent looking at videos. It was multi-billion dollars. There are a lot of DSPs and SSPs which do something called bid skimming. And what that means is you have a second price auction. So say there's multiple buyers bidding for ads in programmatic. One bids 50 cents and the winner bids $1. In a second price auction, the winner is actually supposed to pay 51 cents. But because it's a second price auction, it needs to be blind. Otherwise, the publisher would just bid to get the price up. But what some of these SSPs have been doing is they actually tell the publisher, the guy paid 51 cents. And then they tell the buyer, the lowest bid, the second bid was 99 cents. So they take that difference. Now, there isn't any way to audit whether or not anybody is bid skimming in those campaigns. And ultimately, the brands themselves have very low viewability into how much of their dollars are actually going to publishers because of all these intermediaries. So what the blockchain allows you to do is verify, for everyone to be able to verify how many dollars are flowing to publishers, what the performance is for those ads, whether those ads are meeting the performance requirements of the marketer's orders, and ultimately you can include performance stats like click-through rates and other even lead generation.
And so is that a next phase of where you're going to, or is that the first phase, or the first phase is in the ad measurement, so it's getting the data from the software, and then you're looking at auditing ad bidding, is that right?
Well, yeah, programmatic is phase 2 for us.
Phase 2.
So it's programmatic. Okay. Right now we're focused on direct, and we'll be morphing into programmatic really soon after that.
Cool.
And part of what we're focused on now is also integrating with a lot of different players in the space.
Okay. So I'm a CMO today. I'm interested in just how would you present this offer? Like what's the What's the offer to the CMO?
Right. So they're different decision makers. I think from a CMO perspective, one of the underlying problems is the lack of transparency. So I don't know where my dollars are going, and there's very little knowledge. Like nobody wants to spend money on ads that are not seen by anybody. It just doesn't make any sense. And if you've heard that old saying, 50% of my media spend is lost, I just don't know which half. That's true today. It's literally more than half is lost, and nobody can account for it. If you look at CMO tenure, it's one of the shortest of the C-suite. It's about 18 months. If you look at reallocation of media dollars from different ad agencies, about $140 billion have moved around from one ad agency to another. So the primary reason for this is this lack of transparency and trust, and I think underlying that is a big problem from a CMO perspective. Okay. I think also CMOs care about the efficiency of their campaigns, and they want to make sure that the dollars are being spent in the best way possible. So we help with that as well.
Okay. And do you think, like, why do you think you needed to use the blockchain as opposed to a database?
Right. So the main challenge with having a database is anyone can basically delete results. Right? So, or the results could be lost, or they could be manipulated or changed. And sometimes there are good reasons for that. And by the way, on the blockchain, you can also amend results, but there's a history of what has been amended. So the issue here is that if you have a system that ultimately can be modified and renegotiated, then you don't have a firm system where contracts matter. And if you don't have a system where contracts matter and you can't 100% guarantee that the results mean something, then you're actually going to have to keep your own set of data. And if you keep your own set of data and you don't trust the current data, then you're always going to be comparing that, and there's going to be hundreds of thousands of people, as you have today, comparing the different data sets to make sure if they make sense. So ultimately, probably a good analogy for this is think about a public company without audited financials. How would you feel about investing in that company? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing for a media investor.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what are the current ad measurement companies? Why are they not solving this, and
right.
Why can you solve this?
Yeah, so there are definitely multiple ad measurement companies that are looking to introduce blockchain technologies of their own. And one of the big challenges is if you are the company that's providing the measurement, and you're also the company that's essentially controlling access to the database, then that creates a potential bias. And then also it creates a reliance on that measurement company. So if the measurement company, for example, takes a view that, well, this should be viewable, this shouldn't be viewable, we're going to track it differently, we're going to load our code differently, then ultimately what's going to happen is you might be locked into something and into a system which you can't control because it's not decentralized. So the benefit of having multiple companies provide ad measurement and solutions, you can actually use the better companies for what they're good at. So if there's some companies that really get at display viewability, then you might rely on those. If others are better at audience verification for a type of audience, you might rely on them. And if you find that the viewability company is not being consistent, you can see that because it's on the blockchain, now you can swap out that company.
So really you're really into ad measurement audit, you would say, maybe?
Well, it's more...
Because there's ad measurement already, and then you're taking those feeds and you're auditing them together in the immutable blockchain.
I think probably the best word is reconciliation. So if you look at the top 5 publicly traded ad agency holding companies, they have a market cap to employee ratio about $150,000. So if you put that in perspective, the S&P is around $850,000 market cap to employee, and Google's and Facebook, depending on the stock price, around $6 to $8 million market cap to employee. So basically what that means is there's hundreds of thousands of people running around pulling invoices and pulling reports and putting them all together because of this kind of lack of trust and transparency. So what we do is we are more like an accounting system, not just audit as part of accounting, but also an accounting system that allows you to automatically reconcile your orders with your ad delivery, have trust and transparency around that data, and then basically look at the data or automate functions around that data to make your ad buying and your ad sales much more efficient.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And then there's another, I guess the Brave browser or basic attention token out there is trying to do some things around solving advertising problems and sort of being that middle person between the publisher, the advertiser, and the user, I guess. You know, how does do you see these guys as a competitor?
I think some people do. Obviously, it's a fantastic founding team. So the founder, or its CTO, he was the founder of JavaScript. It's an incredible team. I think there are some notable differences between AdNode and Basic Attention Token. The first one is that with BAT, the marketers need to use a token to buy ads. And if you speak to any ad agency that's of any meaningful size, they budget in fiat, which means they budget in dollars or euros or the Australian dollar. And what that means is they'll never actually pay in a cryptocurrency that's going to be so volatile. I haven't met anyone who would be willing to do that. The second challenge with Basic Attention Token is all the users need to download browsers or plugins in order for their technology to work, which means that if I'm a marketer buying ads on a particular publisher site, there are tens of millions, now hundreds of millions of people need to have already downloaded the Brave technology, which hasn't happened at all. And then the third issue is Brave takes a very specific view that payments need to be made based upon the time spent looking at ads, the exact time spent. Now, that's a really interesting model. I actually, in a prior life, have a named patent that I don't currently own that involves something to do with that. But the reality is that's not how ads are purchased today. Less than 0.001% of ad transactions are for the exact CPH, or the time spent looking at ads.
Right.
So they're looking for the buyers and the publishers to adopt
So do you think Brave
model.
Attention Token, like it's gonna struggle to get adoption?
I think they have been struggling. They've launched quite a while ago, and I think that certainly there's a lot of interest in it from a crypto trading perspective, but realistically, if you speak to any ad agency or marketer, there isn't really enthusiasm from them for anything that's a tradable coin. And then I think the hurdles around also downloading the technology is just another barrier.
Mm-hmm. I use the Brave browser. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And they do a great job of ad blocking.
Yep.
How are you guys sort of integrating ad blocking into AdNode?
Right. So what we're focused on is making sure that publishers, ad agencies, brands are successful, so ultimately that can drive success for the users. And one of the issues with ad blocking is when ad blocking tools are used, often publishers will invest in tools to basically manipulate or work against the ad blockers. So you have a lot of code actually running or trying to run in a system. And then also with ad blocking, there are many types of ads that continue to fall through. And in addition, many publishers, some publishers have seen more ad blocking than others, have actually forced users to either turn off their ad blockers or sign up for a paid subscription in order to access their content.
Right.
So, digital advertising is growing 16% a year. So I don't think I see it going away because of ad blocking, but I think ad blocking is a really interesting response to the experience that users are feeling is that they're just inundated with ads. And a lot of ad experiences, for lack of a better word, they suck. They're just not positive experiences. And I think a lot of that is driven because of the fact that publishers are really struggling to be successful. Trust and transparency makes it difficult for them to sell. It's expensive to just deal with the back office functions of digital advertising, and ultimately without being able to verify that they're delivering the type of ads that marketers want, they're being forced into basically selling a lot of ads that maybe don't work as well. So if the publishers can be efficient in terms of making sure they serve ads that are working but don't serve ads that aren't working, that means there actually will be fewer ads loading in publishers' experiences, which means that's ultimately better for users. And the second part, if publishers can be more financially successful, then that means they can invest in better content and value.
Okay, cool. Let's talk a bit about AdNode. Where are you guys up to in terms of the roadmap and the technology itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we founded the business, the most important key to us for building the product was actually talking to customers before we started building it. So we released an alpha product in September of 2018. It received really positive feedback from various ad agencies, publishers, and other folks in the ad space. we've signed up actually partners for our beta to participate in pilot programs, which we're really excited about. And we're constantly growing the list of brands, ad agencies, and publishers to participate in pilots. We are releasing our beta product at the end of Q1 as well, and we're looking to launch those pilots end of Q1 going into Q2 of 2019.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And how did you fund the company, Mike?
Sure. So we as a founding team have funded the business, and we actually now have some commitments for private financing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
All right. And so how many founders do you sort of have in the crew?
We're 2 co-founders. My co-founder, Daniel Arnold, is the Chief Technology Officer of the company. He's had a number of very successful businesses. His first company, actually, if anybody gets a haircut, they're probably doing the technology for that hair salon in terms of scheduling, billing, things like that. And that company's a market share leader. He has a couple of other successful companies. And my background is I've been in the digital media space for long time, very long time. I previously ran a business called Market Realist, which was an investment research website. I ran that for about 6 years. I was a founder there. Before that, I ran business development at Seeking Alpha, and worked on prior ventures in the media space as well.
Very cool. Tell us about, so you have opted not to launch with a token.
Yep.
Which is very interesting. Tell us why, with that decision, why you did that.
Yeah, so customers don't want tokens. They want to pay in fiat currency, dollars, Canadian, euro. So ultimately that was a response to what we think marketers care about. And also I used to be a publisher, and I know that publishers, they're going to sell those tokens, or they don't want to be paid in tokens. They want to be paid in whatever they're budgeting in. So ultimately that wasn't what our customers wanted, and we didn't want to build a company around fundraising goal. We want to build a company around our customers and being customer obsessed. So,
very cool. Now, a lot of people are very fascinated by EOS in our community, you know, tell us, why did you choose to build on EOS?
Right. So we actually have an ETL abstraction layer, so we can work with multiple blockchains. But we absolutely made the choice to start with EOS first, and we've been publishing to mainnet. There are a number of reasons why. The first reason, I think, is that it's reliable, it's very fast, so we're able to get transactions on a couple of seconds. We get those transactions on, so we're not waiting 15, 20 minutes for enough people to confirm. It just gets on there right away. We found it's effectively low cost for us, so we're paying like relatively low cost, much less than an Ethereum or Bitcoin or really.
And that's because you're buying the RAM, or you're just staking EOS, right?
We're staking coins. That's right.
And then, because ad serving, obviously with my background in Finder, we run a lot of ads.
Yeah. So you need it to be fast and scalable, right?
But the volume's really big as well, and so I wonder, what's your reason or rationale about using EOS? Because you need speed.
Yep.
You're going to need a lot of transactions.
Yep.
So tell us about that decision and when you're going through that and that.
Yeah. It needs to be fast, like you mentioned, but it also needs to be very scalable. So we've been able to, before we got on EOS, we actually created our own EOS network just to test it out, and we were able to get over 1,000 transactions per second. And EOS as a community is doing much better than that. So ultimately, that can support, we think, hundreds of billions of dollars of digital advertising spending. And when you think of, say, an average CPM of $10, you'll get that out of, like, say, for example, Facebook's financial reports. You can back that out, that actually works based upon how we're using the technology, and we would still be a fraction of what EOS is. If Ethereum or Bitcoin, they just would not be able to handle at all that transaction speed. Another really important component is that EOS is a public ledger, which means that it's permissioned, right? So everybody sees the data, but you don't really know whose data it is unless you have the underlying document. But anybody with the underlying document can publicly verify it. That's incredibly important, because if you don't have a public ledger, if it's just all private, then you basically just have an intranet or a database. Makes
sense. And then I guess people can see the transactions on the EOS, like you said, on the blockchain.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of people right now, but it's fascinating. I think your belief in that, and obviously you've got other blockchains you're bringing on. Do you want to tell us about which other blockchains you were considering?
At this time, our position is that EOS is included as part of AdNode, and we are open to adding, and we'll add additional blockchains whenever a major ad agency or a brand requests us to do it.
Gotcha.
But ultimately, that wouldn't be included in our cost of service. So the idea is that right now, we haven't found other blockchain solutions that are developer friendly and scalable and low cost and efficient in a way that just makes sense for our business. But I think that if folks have, for whatever reason, an interest in another blockchain, it's really easy for us to integrate it in there.
Okay. A lot of people are worried about the governance with EOS.
Yeah.
You know, there's some interesting, with the ECAF as well and those kind of things. Tell us about, how do you sort of reconcile? Do you feel worried about the governance of EOS?
I think governance is incredibly important. I think our first concern is that transactions we send end up on the network correctly, and there's never an issue with that. So the reliability of the network is of utmost importance to us. We care that the pricing makes sense to us. So we're probably on the opposite end of most viewers in your show. We're buying the coins, right? So we're not trading them for any particular reason other than we might just need them for our product, and we're not acquiring them for sell to other people. We're basically acquiring them on behalf of our clients. So that makes us a stakeholder in the platform.
Yes.
We want to make sure that the system is transparent. Something that we really like about EOS is that you actually know who all the block producers are, right? They need to identify themselves, and typically you know what regions they're in. You can figure out who the people are behind each of the block producers, and that makes it, I think, more transparent than some of the other solutions. So if you look at, say, Bitcoin or Ethereum, something like 70–80% of the mining actually happens in Asia or China, right? So it's unclear whether you have these sorts of issues, but I think for any sort of system that's new, say you had a private company, it's always a lot messier on the inside than on the outside. So the fact that the community cares to identify these sorts of issues and work them out, I think ultimately that's a positive.
Are there any, I guess, with EOS and that decision, because that's an important, crucial decision. Is there? So it doesn't seem to me like you've got any particular issues. You just really want to use the blockchain, and it's fast and it's working for you.
Yes.
Governance doesn't seem to be an issue.
No, I think we care that the people behind the system are honest.
Right.
Right? Because ultimately we're betting on blockchains, and the reality is that even as we say we add Stellar, say we add another blockchain, we're always reliant that for the previous transactions, the hashes appear. I don't think the hashes are going anywhere because you have billions of dollars of market cap, and you have a heck of a lot of staked interest. So you need to make sure they have a blockchain that has a lot of folks behind it. I think EOS passes that test. And ultimately, I think that we're really responsive more to our clients, more than what we think is the right thing. And I think clients want to be associated with blockchains, as do we, that we think are ethical. So the ethics behind the systems are really, really, really important to us.
So, we had this, Joel, we've got this screenshot here with Horby. We reported with an interesting spreadsheet. It was reported it was a leaked ledger of bought and sold votes potentially, and it's an interesting document in and of itself. Do you think the actions of block producers could threaten the security of the chain?
I think that if you get to that point, you'll probably have a fork, right? Like, I think you'll have that, and I think that anybody who's honest and credible will probably want to be associated with the blockchain that's more credible. So I think that there's enough capital invested in the system that could be avoided, but if you see the stuff not being policed, then I think that's something that people really need to start thinking about.
Okay. And we've got a recent response by Brendan Bloomer around this. He says, we are aware of some unverified claims regarding irregular block producer voting and the subsequent denials of those claims. We believe it is important to ensure a free and democratic election process with EOS, and may as well deem appropriate vote with other holders to reinforce the integrity of this process. We continue to work on working our potential involvement with your goal of empowering the intent of the greater community through a transparent process that incorporates community feedback. So, they're aware of this, to a larger extent.
Yep.
So, And I think there's some interesting proposals. There's rumor, I guess, of a change in the governance coming from Block One. Do you have any speculations around the governance of EOS?
I hate to speculate. I think that for anybody who acquires a meaningful stake, something that I really recommend is actually getting on a Google Chat or video with the block producers that you're looking to vote for, and just make sure that you think they're credible. I'll give a shout out to the EOS New York guys. They seem very credible, and they've been, I think, getting a disproportionate amount of our voting. So ultimately, I think a lot of the trust in the system will be driven by the participants and the users of the system. But I think what's nice about EOS right now is you have a structure here where there's kind of two elements going on. One is you know who the block producers are, which I think really reduces in great ways the risk of some sort of manipulation of the actual results in the blockchain, which I think is foremost the biggest risk. And then I think the second part of it is I think that the features around the scalability and the low-cost nature of the platform make an appealing solution for corporate enterprise users, which are our clients and customers, and that's our business as well. And I think that any firm with a brand presence really wants to be associated with the block producers that are credible and transparent. Yep. So ultimately, we'll want to make sure that that's the trend and that's where the system goes. So I think that's the direction of it. But I think for any new technology, there's always going to be this sort of kind of question around governance and structure, and I think that's a very healthy discussion.
But do you think, because I guess EOS has had this sort of rep, and there's a lot of other ones, this hash graph has 29, I believe, or 39, 39, 29, again, stakers or whatever it may be in their system. It sounds like a similar model, similar governance. Do you think this is like this proof of stake scaling? Because there's a massive debate right now around scaling.
Yeah.
Proof of stake, with Ethereum, issues around it. Is proof of work scalable in terms of when the block producer fees end and things like that? Block rewards end with Bitcoin. Do you think that there is, that are you more of a proof of stake future person or a proof of work future is the future?
I think the future has to be more energy efficient, because ultimately when you exercise great deals of volume of energy for systems that require a lot of transactions and fast processing, I think you ultimately need to go in that direction. I think if you have a use case where you don't have a lot of transactions, then I think obviously things like Bitcoin make a lot more sense. So it really depends on your use case. So I really see multiple players being successful. I think the underlying goal for any system needs to be transparency, which means the hashes need to be public. Yep. I think it needs to be speed. I think it needs to be cost. And I think also needs to be really the usability for developers. So EOS is actually very developer friendly, and that's something we like very much, based on C, etc. So lots of benefits from that perspective. But ultimately, I see AdNode implementing or incorporating multiple blockchain solutions, maybe Stellar, maybe others. We haven't announced others yet, as part of AdNode. And it'll really be up to clients to decide which ones. And you might actually see folks using multiple for different use cases.
So, this year we're seeing obviously a lot of change from last year potentially. What are your sort of predictions or that you think 2019 is going to be all about?
I think it's going to be about building stuff. So, you've had a lot of speculation around the price of different cryptocurrencies and really very little usage. I think CryptoKitties is one of the top 3 dApps on these platforms. Had a couple of thousand users, I think 1,700 users a day, daily active users. So the actual usage of dApps that are not basically infrastructure or trading or really related to the crypto itself, but to a use case that's separate, has been really low. So I think that the technology has gone in a little bit ahead of, or rather the prices have gone ahead of the technology. But I think AdNode and also companies in other industries as well are really now have the tools to start running pilots and start running live production systems. And I think you're going to see some really well-known brands make announcements that they're jumping into blockchain towards the end of this year. I think that's going to be really exciting. And in addition to that, I think I'm not sure that that's going to help prices catch up, but I think of it kind of like the dot-com bubble. Prices were really high, they crashed, and now we're going to go into this like 5 to 10 year phase of really the technology getting ahead of prices, and I think that's really what's going to drive valuations.
Okay. 2 final questions. If you had 2 coins and they were sort of to have a child, merged together, what would the 2 coins be?
Right. So I find the stablecoin space very interesting because I think it has a lot of applications. And I'm looking at TrueUSD, and TrueUSD is very interesting. They take some like 0.1% for a transaction, and then you have Paxos, and Paxos doesn't take anything. And but what they do is you have to pay the Ethereum gas fees basically to transfer the coin. And they're both I think they're both relatively credible. You have audited financials around who's holding the cash, and you can withdraw it, and some are easier to withdraw than others. What I'd love to see is I'd actually love to see some stable coins that are paying interest back to the holders, right? Because the issue with having a stable coin out there is somebody else is collecting interest. There's a cost of holding it. So I think that ultimately, if you now have free stable coins like Paxos, the next step is, and they're making money from the float from holding the coins. I think it'll be really interesting to see how much of that is actually shared with folks who are using it. Because I think if that works, you can really start to see some competition with payment systems.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, we ask everyone on the show, when the clock strikes 12 this year, New Year's Eve.
Yep.
This is not financial advice, by the way. No financial advice. What do you think the price of Bitcoin will be in US dollars?
Interesting question.
I think we're trading right now, just a market update for everyone, $3,580 for Bitcoin, Ethereum at 116, Litecoin $32, EOS $2.46, and Ripple's at 31.8 cents. Everything, I think, has gone effectively sideways in the last 24 hours. 3580. Where do you think we're going to be?
You know, so first, as a disclosure, I hold some Bitcoin, but personally, I don't think it's going to go much higher. So definitely under 10,000, probably under 6,000, most likely around these levels. I think it's going to take some time, probably at least one halving event, maybe much more than that for it really to get back up there. And ultimately, you're going to need to see some real usage, not just speculation.
Okay. So do you have a final number, Mike?
For the end of the year, why don't we say around 4,000?
4,000. There it is. Mike, calling the 4,000 mark US dollars. Mike, thank you so much for telling us all about AdNode. That was absolutely incredible, and how you're building on the EOS blockchain. I think we wish you guys a lot of luck, and appreciate as well you growing the industry and bring your talents to it. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, guys, that is the Daily Exchange, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Yeah.
Very cool.